Heard every week on the amateur radio bands all around the world, broadcast on low-power AM and FM stations all across the U.S., and one of the first podcasts on the Internet, we are This Week in Amateur Radio, the worldwide premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service of the air. Here are the stories for release around the Earth as we come to air with edition number 1394 of This Week in Amateur Radio. Get ready for the 2025 ARRL November sweepstakes on phone. We will have all the details. The FCC proposes auctioning additional spectrum to expand wireless services. We will tell you about a treasure trove of random vintage tech resources. Images from Space celebrate 25 years of amateur radio on the International Space Station. AMSAT receives 2 educational grants from Amateur Radio Digital Communications. The Ukraine is forced to destroy an historic radio telescope that fell into Russian hands. The ARRL issues a new precedent for on-the-air radiograms. We will have the details. Regulators in Australia propose a new amateur radio ban plan. Police in Albania seize the equipment from a de-expedition team and suspect them of espionage. ARRL division elections end on November 21st, 2025, so get your votes in now. The James Webb Space Telescope is repaired through a software fix from Earth. No astronauts needed. The New York State Attorney General James demands the FCC expand multilingual emergency alerts. And musicians Brian Eno and Betray Wolf really launched their new album. We will have all the details for you coming up in this week's report. These headline stories will come to you in a moment along with this week's special features. We'll visit with Bruce Page, KK5DO, and get an update from AMSAT on what's new with all of those amateur satellites in orbit. Australia's own Arnold Benshoff, VK6FLAB, and Foundations of Amateur Radio will attempt to answer the question, what do you call that radio? Or, where did that radio come from? Our own amateur radio historian, Will Rogers, K5WLR, returns with a brand new edition of A Century of Amateur Radio. This week, Will takes us aboard the Wayback Machine to witness the arrival of international amateur communications. And, with the lack of a worldwide system of station identification, that led to confusion over call signs. Without prefixes as we know them today, there was no way to use a call sign to identify a station's country. And, since each country issued call signs independently, duplicates were inevitable. We will hear all about it in this week's edition called Call Sign Confusion. And we will stop by and visit with Bill Sawyers, AJ8B in the DX Corner, with all the latest news on DXpeditions, DX, upcoming radio sport contests, and a lot more. That's all straight ahead as North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service, This Week in Amateur Radio, takes to the air right now. Reporting from our headquarters studio just outside of Albany, New York, I'm George, W2XBS.
And reporting this week from Cortlandville, New York, in the heart of central New York, I'm Chris Perrine, KB2FAF.
Coming to you from Bradenton, Florida, where the chilly 37-degree temperatures had our local gator swimming laps in the pond to stay warm, I'm Mike Nikolich, N9OVQ.
And reporting from our news bureau just outside Albany, New York, in the Geek Cave studios, I'm Rich Lawrence, KB2MOB.
And reporting from our news bureau in Rochester, New York, along the southern shore of Lake Ontario, I'm Dave Wilson, WA2HOY.
And reporting from our news bureau in Sandwich, Illinois, where we're currently experiencing some nice 60-degree weather just before we're going to get hit with 20 degrees tomorrow, I'm Jordon Kurtz, Kilo Echo 9, Bravo, Papa Oscar.
Reporting from our news bureau in Salem, Ohio, this is Denny Haight, NZ8D.
And reporting from our Troy, New York News Bureau, where we've just had our first snowfall, I'm Eric, Kilo Delta 2, Romeo Juliet X-Ray.
And from our studios in Naugatuck, Connecticut, where it's just a beautiful day today in the 60s, but the wind and the cold is on its way for next week, I'm Steve, K1FRC.
And reporting from our amateur radio outpost in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, where due to snow, sleet, and 20-degree temperatures. It's looking more like Christmas than Thanksgiving. I'm Don Hulick, K2ATJ.
And reporting from our news bureau in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where it's been warmer than normal for this time of year, I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR.
Leading off our news this week, the November sweepstakes. One of amateur radio's most anticipated weekends of the year is almost here. The 2025 ARRL November Sweepstakes Phone Single Sideband Voice Contest takes place November 15th through the 17th, beginning at 2100 UTC Saturday and running through 0259 UTC Monday. With all the details of this year's running of the November sweepstakes, we go to John Ross, KD8 IDJ, who files this special report from League headquarters.
The CW Morse Code event was held 2 weeks ago. Sweepstakes is more than just a contest. It's a long-standing tradition in amateur radio self-training and operating skill. Participants throughout the U.S. and Canada share a unique exchange of information designed to simulate message handling procedures. The event traces its roots back to 1930, making it the oldest domestic radio contest. After a pause during World War II, it returned stronger than ever, continuing to connect generations of radio amateurs. Each station may be contacted only once, and multipliers are limited to the 85 ARRL and Radio Amateurs of Canada sections. There are no changes to sweepstakes multipliers for 2025. Contacting all of them earns a clean sweep and the bragging rights that come with that, with the coveted clean sweep coffee mug, a badge of honor, and for many hams. Last year's phone weekend, held November 16th through the 18th, 2024, delivered solid activity and good participation across the bands. A total of 1,457 logs were submitted, representing 356,085 valid contacts after log checking. While band conditions weren't spectacular, they were better than the previous year, with 10 meters showing impressive early activity, carrying 14% of all QSOs in the first 2 hours. 20 meters proved to be the workhorse band, accounting for 32% of all contacts, while 40 meters contributed 25% and 15 meters accounted for 20%. The single-operator low-power category once again led the pack, making up 42% of entries. Overall, single-operator categories represented 94% of all submissions. The limited antennas overlay, introduced in 2023, continued its momentum, with 483 participants choosing that option. Youth participation also ticked upward, with 19 logs submitted in the youth overlay. Among them, Levi Jeffers, K6JO, operating as ND7K, reclaimed the top youth overlay position and placed 7th overall in the single-operator high-power category. Sweepstakes newcomer Max Friedman, N4ML, today he's a member of the ARRL headquarters staff, made a strong showing in single-operator unlimited high-power with the second highest youth score of 158,000 points. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
Whether you're a seasoned contester, a casual operator, or taking part in your first major event, ARRL November Sweepstakes Phone is your chance to be part of one of amateur radio's greatest traditions. Fire up your rig, check your logging software, and get ready to make some memorable contacts this weekend. For complete information, including full rules and entry details, visit the ARRL Sweepstakes page.
Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr has introduced a proposal to expand access to mid-band spectrum for future wireless technologies. The draft notice of proposed rulemaking seeks public input on auctioning as much as 180 megahertz of spectrum in the 3.98 to 4.2 gigahertz range known as upper C-band for use in 5G and upcoming 6G networks. Chairman Carr stated, "Restoring America's leadership position is important. After all, freeing up spectrum drives down prices for consumers, creates jobs, and increases competition. It also plays a vital role in promoting our national security and geopolitical interests." He continued, "We've seen how the lower C-band powers in-home and high-speed mobile broadband across the country. So it is now time to start making important decisions on how best to unleash new wireless services quickly in the band." The proposal is part of a broader initiative to strengthen U.S. leadership in wireless innovation while maintaining aviation safety standards in adjacent frequencies. The Commission plans to vote on the proposal at its November open meeting.
You're listening to North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine of the air. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, distributed worldwide at twiar.net.
Participants in the National Traffic System message nets will soon be noticing two changes in ARRL radiograms. John Ross, KD8IDJ, files this special report on the NTS changes from League headquarters in Newington.
For the first time in 45 years, a new message precedent or priority level is being introduced, and the list of numbered ARL radiogram text has been updated and expanded. The new C for certified precedents joins the long-standing list of E for emergency, P for priority, W for welfare, and R for routine message categories. It is to be used for unique messages to specific individuals with known contact information and must be delivered within 48 hours of origination. The C precedent may not be used for bulk messages such as those sent to welcome new members to the hobby. It is the first new precedent established since the W welfare category was introduced in 1980. There are many newer ARL number radiogram text. Anyone involved in traffic nets is encouraged to download the complete list from either the NTS 2.0 website or the Radio Relay International RRI website. The changes are part of an ongoing effort to modernize the national traffic system and result from a memorandum of understanding establishing a closer working relationship between NTS and RRI. More details are available in the November issue of the NTS letter. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
In addition, the list of standardized ARL numbered radiograms has been updated and expanded to keep up with changing technologies and messaging needs during disasters and emergencies. The use of ARL in a message alerts the receiving operator to expect ARRL numbered radiogram in the message text. For example, the new ARL 35 is a shortened form of telling the recipient that the sender is evacuating to a family member or friend's house. And the ARL 92 is shorthand for widespread disruptions to internet service at this location. There are many more new ARL numbered radiogram texts. Anyone involved in traffic nets is encouraged to download the complete list from either the NTS 2.0 website or Radio Relay International.
Finding, collecting, and restoring vintage tech is the rewarding pastime of many in the amateur radio hobby. Working with old school gear can be tough, though, when documentation or supporting resources are hard to find. If you're in need of an old manual or a little scrap of software, you might find the Vintage Technology Digital Archive, the VTDA, a useful destination to add to your vintage tech arsenal. The VTDA is a simple website. There's no search function or fancy graphical way to browse the resources on offer. Instead, it's merely a collection of files and a well-ordered directory tree. Click through and you'll find a collection of high-resolution scans of various old diskettes and their packaging. Other dictionary trees will give you all kinds of useful documentation, from press releases to datasheets for printers long forgotten. You can even find Heathkit schematics and old Windows boot images if you dive into the depths. While it doesn't have everything by any means, the VTDA has lots of interesting little bits and pieces that you might not find anywhere else. It's a great counterpart to other archival efforts out on the web, particularly if you're a member of the Retro Computing Massive.
Amateur radio on the International Space Station, or ERIS, will mark two major milestones this month with a special slow scan television event aboard the International Space Station. With more on this story, we go to John Ross, KD8IDJ.
From November 12th through November 20th, the station will transmit a series of 12 commemorative SSTV images, pausing only for a scheduled educational contact. The SSTV Spacetacular will highlight both the recent World Scouting Movement's Jamboree on the Air, JOTA, and the 25th anniversary of ERIS ham radio operations on the ISS. ERIS first went on the air on November 13th, 2000, when the ISS Expedition 1 crew made the inaugural ham radio contact using an Ericsson VHF radio. That same year, the first scheduled school contact linked ISS Commander Bill Shepard, who had the call sign KD5GSL, with students at Luther Burbank School in Burbank, Illinois. Since then, ARIS has connected an estimated 200,000 students, educators, and enthusiasts each year, with astronauts living and working aboard the orbiting laboratory. For this month's event, scouts, educators, students, and amateur radio operators worldwide are invited to receive and decode the transmitted images. Participants may upload their received pictures to the ARIS SSTV gallery to earn a commemorative electronic award certificate. In ARIS's most recent SSTV campaign, held in early October to celebrate World Space Week, nearly 9,000 images were submitted by more than 3,600 participants in all countries, including 3 from Antarctica. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
For the latest SSTV schedules, frequencies, and event details, follow ARIS on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
Regulatory changes and shifts in on-air activity are two of the major drivers behind a wide-ranging overhaul being considered for Australia's ham bands. The Wireless Institute of Australia's Technical Advisory Committee opened a community consultation on October 17th and is expecting hams who have made requests over the years to formally weigh in on these proposals until the deadline on December 12, 2025. The proposed changes accommodate growth in the use of new modes and new areas of interest, particularly those involving the use of digital technology. They include revising ATV segments based on widespread adoption of digital ATV modes, a review of repeater subbands considering the growth of digital voice hotspots on 2 meters and 70 centimeters, and band plan data for the microwave bands between 24 and 134 gigahertz are also being reviewed. On HF, the proposal will try to achieve better alignment of band plans, including 630 meters and 160 meters. A comprehensive list can be found on the WIA website. The WIA is seeking responses only from licensed hams and clubs based in Australia. Revisions are expected to be published by the end of the first quarter of next year.
New York Attorney General Letitia James this week demanded that the Federal Communications Commission immediately publish a rule that would expand language access for government emergency alerts sent to cell phones. The emergency alerts, which are currently only sent in English and Spanish, can be life-saving during disasters. A new rule finalized and unanimously adopted by the FCC in January of 2025 planned to expand the alerts to 13 additional languages. The FCC refused to move them implemented. In a letter from the FCC, Attorney General James and the coalition warned that if the rule isn't submitted for publication within 30 days, they are prepared to take legal action. Wireless emergency alerts are short text-based message alerts sent by government agencies through cell carriers to warn the public of imminent threats such as severe weather, natural disasters, missing persons, or public safety emergencies. These alerts are among the most widely used and effective public warning tools in the United States.
Amateur Radio Digital Communications, or ARDC, has a mission to support the tinkerers, the dreamers, and the builders who keep ham radio strong. They recently issued a reminder that they are actively looking for applicants. Grants are available from ARDC, giving top priority to projects in one of several areas. Supporting satellite technology for ham, analog, and digital communications, developing hands-on, open source, and educational materials and projects for learners in schools and clubs, and delving into open source hardware and software systems that include SDRs, new modulation techniques, and codec technologies. ARDC said that projects outside these areas would also be welcome to apply, but these areas are closest to the core of the organization's goal of promoting the freedom to tinker, build, communicate, and openly share information. Visit the ARDC website for more information.
You are listening to North America's premier news and information service for the amateur radio hobbyist. We are This Week in Amateur Radio.
Two British amateur radio enthusiasts have been left frustrated by the seizure of their radio equipment by Albanian police following what they claim was an innocent trip to Tirana. Colin McGowan, a delivery driver from Scotland, and Paul Tutensor from Essex traveled to Tirana in May to set up a new radio station to broadcast their signal to other ham radio enthusiasts. They hired a villa and set up antennas to broadcast information using their established call signs. But when it came to leaving the country, customs stopped them to look at the equipment. On the way home, the Albanian customs guy had a look at our equipment, and he got quite interested, so we explained what it was. The next thing we knew, the police wanted to ask us more questions. So we were taken aside and asked to explain what everything did, McGowan told Edinburgh Live. He added he thought the authorities' concern was their kit could interfere with signals put out by the police or government, but explained they operate on a different frequency, so that would never happen. In the end, they took away our gear, and they still have it 3 weeks later, he added, noting that the Albanian authorities had been in touch with their Scottish counterparts. I'm not exactly James Bond, to be honest. I couldn't even wire up one of those video doorbells, so I can assure you I wasn't spying. I'm not entirely sure what spying might even entail, to be honest, and I wouldn't know where to start, he added. The two believe that the authorities had probably not seen such equipment before, and a lack of experience with amateur radio could have resulted in what the two call a misunderstanding. Edward Murkaj, head of the Border Police of Rennes, told ABC News the device was captured by the scanner and there's an ongoing investigation into this matter. Albanian police are not giving any further details due to this sensitive investigation, he added, noting that Tirana prosecutor's office is continuing the investigation. It is the first time such gear was seized by the Border Police force at Mother Teresa Airport.
Elections are underway for seats on the ARRL Board of Directors. Members in the Pacific, Southeastern, and Southwestern divisions have until noon Eastern Time on November 21st, 2025 to vote. You may vote in the election if you were a full member in the division as of September 10th, 2025. Check your email and mail for voting instructions from Election Services Corporation. If you haven't received your ballot information, contact the ESC Help Desk at 866-720-4357 or email arrlelection@electionservicescorp.com. ARRL is governed by its board of directors. Elections are held for contested seats in 5 of the 15 ARRL divisions each year for terms of 3 years. Winners of the current election cycle will assume their roles beginning January 1st, 2026.
The ARRL has published its 2024 annual report. Included is a summary of the July 2024 decision made by the ARRL Board of Directors to approve a strategic direction, adding inspiring and educating youth as a third advocacy priority, alongside ARRL's longstanding commitments to promoting and protecting amateur radio. Also included is ARRL's report to America, which recognizes the contributions of radio amateurs, particularly those involved with the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, in supporting emergency response efforts during various natural disasters. The report concludes with copies of the 2024 and 2023 financial statements and an independent auditor's report. In other ARRL news, there are open positions at the League. Come join the headquarters staff of ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio. We are currently seeking qualified applicants for the following positions: Membership Manager, Senior RFI Lab Engineer, Public Relations and Outreach Manager, and Purchasing Associate. Full details may be found on the ARRL HR webpage at www.arrl.org/careers.
Roger Adam, an adjacent property owner in Genoa, Nevada, used the general public comment period to object to a 60-foot ham radio transmitting tower approved by County Community Development near 265 Old Barn Road. Adam said the Genoa Historic District Commission had rejected a 60-foot 5G tower 2 years earlier and said Community Development approved a 60-foot ham radio tower adjacent to his property's border. He said he submitted opposition by email and telephone on the same day he received the development notice, and that the project applicant's southern neighbor refused to sign documents approving the project. Adam raised safety concerns about the telescoping tower's structural integrity, saying its proximity to adjacent properties could cause a collapse, property damage, or fire. He said multiple Pioneer Trail subdivision owners oppose the tower and contended that at least 6 Genoa Lake residents were not notified by the county. Adam also criticized the project notice, saying it described a retractable amateur radio antenna without drawings or photos, and that written comments were limited to 10 days and sent by mail only to adjacent property owners. Adam asked why the project was treated as a minor design review rather than a larger review process, and urged elected commissioners to ensure taxpayers have the options to vote on decisions that they consider significant. The board did not take action on the matter during the meeting. The comment was heard during general public comment. No county staff presented a reply on the record during the public comment period. The matter remains at the community development review stage, as described by the commenter.
And the countdown is on. ARRL full members have till December 31st, 2025 to earn up to 6 automatic entries for a chance to win the ICOM Dream Station. This is a complete ham radio station featuring a limited edition IC 7760 HF and 50 MHz transceiver, an IC PW2 amplifier, desktop microphone, and a special ICOM 60th anniversary Seiko watch, all generously donated by Icon America. Members automatically earn ARRL sweepstake entries when you join or renew your ARRL membership. That you earn 1 entry. If you set up auto renewal, you earn 2 entries. And if you donate to the ARRL Diamond Club, you earn 1 entry for every $50 donated. Note that there's a limit of 6 entries per person. ARRL Director of Development Kevin Beal, K8EAL, shared that many members, including longtime life members, have joined the ARRL Diamond Club this year, earning entries while supporting amateur radio beyond membership dues. Diamond Club donors are fueling the future of amateur radio while unlocking a shot at winning a state-of-the-art ICOM Dream Station valued at over $17,000, said Beal. These donations provide vital funds that will ensure ARRL will continue to work to promote amateur radio, including advocacy, education, technical resources, and public service. These funds also fuel our work to develop the next generation of active hams, including free student membership for youth and programs that recruit new hams of all ages. Every gift is an investment in the hobby we love. The Diamond Club is an opportunity to amplify amateur radio's voice through the ARRL, and this year to potentially upgrade your shack with a winning sweepstakes entry, said Beal. Learn more about the 2025 ARRL sweepstakes and view the official rules on the league's website. On a personal note, I've been to the league headquarters like last week. The prize is on display. You don't want to miss this. Steve Sawyer, K1 FRC.
Moraine Park Technical College has generously donated 5 like-new laptop computers to the Fond du Lac Amateur Radio Club, supporting the club's mission to promote education, emergency communications, and technical innovation within the community. The donation will help the club modernize its equipment and expand its educational outreach programs. The laptops will be used for digital communication demonstrations, emergency preparedness training, and licensing courses for new amateur radio operators. We are incredibly grateful to Moraine Park Technical College for their thoughtful contribution, said Dave McCumber, president of the Fond du Lac Amateur Radio Club. These laptops will strengthen our ability to teach, train, and support both new and experienced radio operators throughout the region. We will also be using them for required license testing that we provide and field day operations. Moraine Park Technical College regularly partners with local organizations to support community learning and technical advancement. At Moraine Park, we believe in empowering our communities through access to technology and education, said Donna Haas, purchasing director at Moraine Park Technical College. We're pleased to note these laptops will help foster hands-on learning and emergency communication readiness. Founded in 1952, the Fond du Lac Amateur Radio Club has been an active part of the community for decades, providing technical education, public service communications, and emergency support during severe weather and other local events. For more information about the Fond du Lac Amateur Radio Club, visit www.fdlhams.com. To learn more about Moraine Park Technical College, visit www.morainepark.edu.
You are listening to This Week in Amateur Radio, Available as an on-demand stream from Spotify, Deezer, and wherever podcasts are available.
Hello and welcome to the DX Corner for your weekly dose of DX. I'm Bill, AJAB. I can't believe that Christmas is only 40 days away. That means the CQ Worldwide CW contest is about 2 weeks away. For me, that is the pinnacle of contests for the year. Last year, I added 11 entities to my marathon listing for 2024. I need that many as more this year to keep pace with last year. Speaking of CQ Worldwide CW, here's a tip. The week before and the week after a contest can really yield some great DX, much easier than it might be during the contest. The week before, operators are getting their stations tweaked and tuned up and maybe new equipment or an amplifier or a new antenna, so they'll be on the air before the contest. Usually the week after a contest, or at least the first several days, these same operators are on some of the work bands that aren't usually in the contests, and that way they can give out QSOs while they're there. So pay attention to the week before and the week after. Wow, was I surprised. I've had 11 listeners request the special 160-meter newsletter that our club put out that I mentioned last week. So here's your last chance. You can get a copy by emailing me at thedxmentor@gmail.com. And it does cover about everything you need to know to get on 160. Each week, I try to focus on those entities that will be available in the next 7 days. There is so much data to sift through that I thought a focus on the next week might be helpful. Here's what you should find QRV when you tune the bands. The following DX information comes from Bernie, W3UR, editor of the Daily DX, the Weekly DX, and the How's DX column in QST. If you would like a free 2-week trial of the Daily DX, your only source of real-time DX information, just drop me a note at thedxmentor@gmail.com. So let's start off with 9 Uniform 1 Radio Uniform, or Burundi. The 9U1RUD expedition to Burundi has provided frequent, detailed updates, all of which have been shared here and in the Daily DX. The team, situated on a mountainside at 7,677 feet above sea level, has had as many as 10 high-power stations on the air at once, 160 through 6 meters. They have paid much attention to their antennas, repairing, relocating, building, and rebuilding them as needed. As of the 7th of November, 9 Uniform 1 RU has amassed nearly 75,000 QSOs with over 46,000 on FT8 and over almost 18,000 on CW. So well done. Easter Island. CE0YHF Jorge is back on Easter Island to repair some of the medical equipment at the Hango Roa Hospital. He expects to be there until at least the end of the month or as long as needed just before Christmas. He notes strong winds can easily destroy antennas, and homemade antennas hold up much better. Late yesterday, he was on 6-meter FT8, 50.313, working into Japan, Southern Central America, Northern South America, and the Southern Caribbean from about 2335 Zulu to 0015 Zulu. He has also added a small amplifier. From the Cayman Islands, we find NF3R Joel, whose QRV with his vacation-style operation from Grand Cayman as Zulu Fox 2 Radio Juliet until November 17th. He'll have a 100-watt IC7300 and an end-fed antenna. Activity will be on the FT8 modes and single sideband on 80 through 6 meters. QSOs will be uploaded to LOTW and Club Log, and you can QSL ZF2RJ via NF3R. Well, here's another one I'm interested in, the San Andreas and Providencia entity, HK0-A. The Spanish operators EA7BF, EA7FPG, EA7JW, and EA7ATX have been granted licenses and official authorization by the Colombian Ministry of Information Technology and Communications to operate from San Andreas Island under the call sign 5 Juliet 0 Echo Alpha. The scheduled dates are November 20th to the 30th. All equipment has been prepared and is ready for shipment. The team, though small, possesses considerable infrastructure. Operations are planned to commence on November 20th, with final updates expected to be communicated several days prior to the start date. Stay tuned. And this is a case where something like the Daily DX, where Bernie sends out instant, updated, real-time notes, really makes a difference because you can find out that these guys are suddenly on the air through Bernie, where you otherwise may not be able to find it out. PY1 SAD Aldir is back in Guyana as 8 Radio, and QRV once again from Georgetown is 8 Radio 1 Tango Mike until December 7th. During the week, listen for him on CW, sideband, and digital modes on 1.8 through 50 megahertz between 2300 Zulu and 0200 Zulu. Over the weekends, watch for him to be on much more often. And you can QSL the 8 Romeo 1 Tango Mike via PY1 SAD, LOTW, QRZ, or EQSL. Mike, DF8AN, will be operating QRP as 9 Hotel Stroke DF8AN from Malta until November 16th, mainly using the digital modes and some CW, and you can QSL via his own home call of 9 Fox 8 Alpha November. Well, here's one I'm particularly interested in because I don't have Bangladesh confirmed yet. S21 Alpha Charlie Papa tells us that he is excited for the upcoming, quote, Sandarbans The Expedition Bangladesh 2025. It should currently be QRV until November 17th, from what he said is, quote, the world's largest mangrove forest and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Sundarbans in the Kuna Range, Sundarbans West Forest Division is where this is located. It is grid NL42SL and POTA ID PD0051. The Amateur Radio Club Akuna is organizing the young operators S21 SRK, S21 ACP, S21 CMD, and S21 AKL. They plan sideband and FT8 with 3 rigs, 1 high power, 2 QRP, to a Yagi multi-band cobweb, and a fan dipole. So look for S21 and let's all get in the logs. Toga, 5 Victor 7 Radio United, is QRV through November 19th with RA1ZZ Vasily and R9LR Vlad operating. This will be a holiday-style operation on HF, CW, sideband FT8, and the QO100 satellite, with a focus on 160 and 80 meters. Direct OQRS requests and all donors will receive a fast LOTW confirmation. Paper QSLs will be via Clublog OQRS and donations of $10 or more. Hong Kong, VR2. To celebrate Hong Kong's role as a co-host for the 15th National Games of the People's Republic of China, the TIACC Wuhan Phi Sec School, operating a special event amateur radio station whose call is Victor Radio 2, November Golf Charlie, until November 21st. This should enable staff and students to engage directly with the event and connect with radio enthusiasts worldwide. The station's call sign, thoughtfully designated by OFCA, merges Hong Kong's VR2 prefix with the National Games acronym NGC to highlight the occasion's significance. The DX Mentor features a new podcast episode this coming weekend, a discussion with a young op, Pia DL7 PIA. Pia is one of the youngest hams to win the CQ Marathon contest in Europe in 2024. She is also an accomplished contester, POTA operator, member of CW Ops, violinist, pianist. Well, you get the idea. Check it out and let me know what you think. If you want to follow all of the latest DX podcast and YouTube releases, you should check out the DX Mentor Facebook page and subscribe to be kept up to date on all of the DX activities. Contest updates. CQ Worldwide CW. At the end of the month, you will be able to participate in the CQ Worldwide contest. The dates are November 25th and 26th. Details can be found at cqww.com. This is my favorite contest by far, and I hope to work you in it. The information below is reprinted from a 2022 edition of CQ Magazine with their permission, and I have updated some of the numbers. Check the website for changes and modifications. Quote, join nearly 40,000 participants from over 200 DX entities and all 40 CQ zones in the world's largest DX contest. The CQ Worldwide DX Contest, or CQWW, offers 48 hours of nonstop DX chasing fun with activity taking place from virtually every part of the world. Whether you are competing for awards, looking for a few new band countries, or simply filling up your logbook, the CQ Worldwide offers something for everyone. Check out the various overlay categories for even more chances to enjoy ham radio's premier operating event. Regardless of your entry class, the bands magically light up in the CQ Worldwide contest with activity levels that are unlike any other radio competitions, end quote. In fact, we used to always joke, it's like, why are the bands dead until contest weekend? What do these guys know that we don't? Well, of course, it's not that. It's just that people are actually on the air. Well, we'll continue. Quote, working stations is easy. Exchange and log a signal report and your CQ zone number. So for instance, on CW, it might be 59905. If you're not sure which zone you're in, visit the CQ Worldwide website, and there's a place there where you can find that out. Generally speaking, for U.S. operators, the U.S. West Coast is Zone 3, the East Coast is Zone 5, and the rest of the lower 48 is Zone 4. Western Europe is mostly Zone 14, and Japan is in Zone 25. Contacts are valid only on the 1.8, 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz amateur radio bands. No work or 60-meter bands are allowed. Your final score is based on QSO points earned for each contact times the number of multipliers worked. Contacts with other continents count 3 points each. Contacts with the same continent but different country count 1 point, except in North America where they count 2 points. Same country contacts earn 0 points but do count for multiplier credit. Multipliers are the number of DXCC entities and worked all Europe countries, plus IG9 or IH9, which are Italian properties, worked on each band, plus the number of CQ zones worked on that band. Don't worry about calculating your score. I know this sounds complicated. The CQ Worldwide Contest Committee's contest log checking software will do that for you when you submit a log. Most participants are using readily available contesting logging software to help as well. So for instance, I use N1MM and it tracks all of that. It calculates everything and I just have to send it in. If you do work that, let me know how you do and what your thoughts are. Until next week, this is Bill, AJ8B, saying 7-3, and thanks to my XYL Karen for her love and support. I hope to hear you in the pileup and in the DX contest. Have a great DX week.
You're listening to North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine of the air. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, distributed worldwide at twiar.net.
Welcome to the 46th segment of Ham Radio History, a century of amateur radio. Ham's Organizations, Events, Inventions. I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR. Our gratitude goes to Chris Cadella, W2PA, for permitting us to use his website in the preparation of these segments. Now, come along with us as we present the next chapter of Ham Radio History. Call sign confusion. With the arrival of international amateur communication, the lack of a worldwide system of station identification led to confusion over call signs. Without prefixes as we know them today, there was no way to use a call sign to identify a station's country. And since each country issued call signs independently, duplicates were inevitable. This hadn't been a big problem for U.S. hams before the first international QSOs, since Canada was the only other country within normal range having a large number of active hams. In Europe, where several countries were reachable, they had been considering the problem for some time. Louis Jacquet, French 2KT, wrote that he did not like the method that had been used for some time by U.S. and Canadian amateurs of replacing DE, the Morse characters called an intermediate, indicating that the preceding call sign is that of the station being called, and the one to follow identifies the station doing the calling, by other letters depending on who was transmitting to whom. He rightly pointed to the rapidly growing number of combinations that became possible once a few other countries were added. It would require a dictionary. Jacquet and the French radio organization SATSF, la Société Française d'études de télégraphie et téléphonie sans fil, literally translated as the French Society for the Study of Wireless Telegraphy and Telephony, suggested using one additional letter, the first initial of the country's name, at the beginning of the call sign to indicate national identity as proposed by Léon Deloy, France's best-known amateur. Thus, the U.S. America would use A, France F, the UK England E, Holland H, and Spain S. He did not explain how to handle the situation when another country was added that had the same first letter as one already being used. Another suggested method, pooling prefixless call sign blocks around the world, was deemed impractical since it did not automatically eliminate existing duplicates and therefore would require reassigning many thousands of call signs, especially in the U.S. ARRL Secretary Kenneth Warner, in response, liked the prefix idea better than the proposed system of intermediates, DE and its variants, but suggested that another option might be to use intermediates composed of one letter from each country. He did not seem to like the idea of lengthening call signs. The example he gave was that if the U.S. used U, Canada C, France F, etc., then a U.S. to U.S. contact would replace DE simply with the single letter U. Two letters would be used when calling between nations with the call country first. Thus, a U.S. station calling France would be 8AB FU 1BHW. This might not work, he admitted, since international regulation specifically prescribed the use of DE. The ARRL appealed to the U.S. Department of Commerce for advice on the matter, hoping that they would suggest a solution at the next International Radio Congress. But hams needed at least a temporary solution now. In late 1923, international communications was coming about faster than anticipated, triggered by the first successful two-way contact across the Atlantic. Because amateur call signs were not assigned according to the rules governing commercial stations, which in fact had been using prefixes for a long time, the confusion on the air continued and compounded. The League polled as many amateur radio organizations in other countries as possible in an attempt to construct a scheme that might be accepted by the majority of them. There were many suggestions. A list of requirements to eliminate call sign ambiguity was worked out, mostly trying to avoid lengthening exchanges or changing call signs. That was why prefixes were not considered at first, and probably why League Director Charles A. Service continued to advocate replacing DE as the intermediate instead of adopting international prefixes. Whatever was eventually agreed upon would be used only until the next International Radiotelegraphic Convention, which might not happen for a few years. Although there was no complete agreement, the most widely adopted scheme built upon the American-Canadian pattern already in limited use. A single letter was assigned to each country, and the intermediate was then composed of one letter for each station, first the call, then the calling station, as Warner had earlier described. With U for the U.S. and C for Canada, an example of calling sequence would be 1AW UC 9AL, with 1AW, of course, being the U.S. station. When stations of the same country were involved, only one letter would be used. Thus, DE would be done away with completely, since neither letter was assigned to any country in the new list. Duplicates were eliminated by using a different letter that was still phonetically suggestive of the country. The initial list had 14 entries: A. Australia, C. Canada, F. France, G. Great Britain, I. Italy, M. Mexico, N. Netherlands, O. South Africa, the exception, P. Portugal, Q. Cuba, phonetic, R. Argentina, phonetic, S. Spain, U. United States, and Z. New Zealand. Although there were not enough letters for all the countries of the world, only a small number of them had amateurs. Eventually there would be a problem, but since 12 were left unused, most believed that the supply of letters would last until the next convention. Official governmental sanctioning of this scheme was not sought, since the agreement was made directly among groups of amateurs and would neither affect other services nor change any call signs. Nevertheless, several countries unofficially indicated approval. UK officials, however, insisted that instead of using a new intermediate, British amateurs should add the appropriate letter to both call signs. Thus, a French amateur would use the agreed-upon intermediate, but in reply, the British station would continue using DE, but call, for example, F8AB DE G2SH. UK amateurs, it seemed, were ahead of the game, since this is exactly the scheme that would eventually be adopted internationally. There were some other objections favoring the British plan, but at this early stage it was deemed not to be universally acceptable, since some countries specifically prohibited adding a letter to a call sign. In some other countries, non-amateur services were already being assigned call signs based on a sequence of one letter followed by a number. Official prefixes would have to wait a few more years. Faced with the new reality of international QSOs, amateurs also wondered whether the myriad of worldwide languages would pose an obstacle to easy communication. They began to discuss several so-called universal language ideas that were popular at the time. In Europe, where multiple languages had long existed within a short distance, amateurs were forming international radio societies which were attempting to define a single international language, or IL as they called it, for use on the air. Their language was called Edo and was based on 11,000 word roots taken from 8 languages. Together with 14 grammatical terminations, the roots were used to form a variety of words and conjugations that could be recognized, it was claimed, by a large percentage of native speakers of the various constituent languages. In North America, Henry W. Hetzel, secretary of the Philadelphia Esperanto Society, argued that radio was just one example of increasing interaction across language barriers, and that there was a greater need than ever for an international language as promoted by the International Auxiliary Language Movement. He was certain that an international language will be one of the realities in the very near future, and that his choice, Esperanto, was certainly better than Latin. The rationale seemed to take hold at the ARRL, at least for a little while. Reasoning that the question of an international language for radio was linked to the use of one for all other purposes, the League decided to endorse Esperanto in September 1924 after studying the matter for 2 years. It was considered the most widely adopted worldwide. Realistically, however, hams would not adopt such a language solely to support their radio activities, Warner admitted, and would not make the necessary slight effort until the whole world takes up the idea. With the prevalent use of Q signals and other abbreviations, amateurs would come to understand that they had little need for a new universal language. They already had one. Included in this material are quotes from the following: International Intermediate Signals, International Amateur Radio, QST, August 1923, page 58. Charles A. Service, The International Intermediate, QST, December 1923, page 18. O.C. Roos, Get Ready for IL, Work with Foreign Amateurs, QST, February 1924, page 21. Kenneth B. Warner, ARRL endorses Esperanto, QST, September 1924, page 40. With thanks to Chris Cadella, W2PA, for allowing us to use his website, Ham Radio History, A Century of Amateur Radio, Ham's Organizations, Events, Inventions, in the preparation of this segment, I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR, reporting for This Week in Amateur Radio.
We pause for stations along the network to identify. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, your amateur radio and technology news magazine of the air, available as a podcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartMedia, and Spotify.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. If you use a word often enough, it starts to lose its meaning. The other day, during breakfast, coffee, whilst playing one of our Start the Day with a Smile word games, the word radio turned up. I grinned and pointed out that this was my favourite word, to which my partner mentioned that in Italian it's referred to as la radio, which made us both wonder where it actually came from. Did the Italian language import the word or export it, given that Guglielmo Marconi was Italian? A quick search advised us that it came from Latin, radius, meaning spoke of a wheel, beam of light, or ray. Fully enlightened, we finished our coffee and got on with our day. Except I couldn't stop thinking about this. Having recently spent some quality time looking into the history of the RF circulator, I figured searching the patent records might be a solid way to get some handle on where this word radio came from. Initially, Google Patent Search unearths the oldest as being from 1996. Not very helpful. Adding 1900 as the end date filter turns up a radio cabinet patent with a filing date of 1833. Except that it was published and granted in 1931, which is confirmed by the patent itself. This level of corruption in the data affects at least a dozen patents, but I dare say there's plenty more like that. 1857 turns up a patent with the word broadcasting, in the context of broadcasting guano, so nothing much has changed in nearly 170 years, but I digress. Adding quotes to the search term unearths a patent from 1861. Apparently, iron roads, locomotives, large slopes and small radio curves relates to the other meaning of the word radius, in Spanish. 1863 gives us ruffle stitching, made upon the radio, but the patent is so corrupt that it's pretty much unreadable. 1871 unearths an electromagnetic engine, but the text has so much gibberish that I suspect that the word radio is a happy accident. 1873 shows us a wireless signalling system. Bingo! The patent shows us transmitter and receiver circuits, antennas, messages and frequencies and a whole bunch of relevant radio information. Except that the date on the patent itself is 1919. And you wonder why people argue about who invented what when. I'll spare you the gas apparatus, petrol lamps with cigar cutter, running gear for vehicles and bounce to 1897. Method of and apparatus for converting X-rays into light for photographic purposes. The first occurrence of radio in the form of radiograph, complete with pictures of the bones of a hand drawn meticulously from presumably an X-ray. I confess I'm not convinced. Using the United States Patent and Trademark Office search for the word radio gives you 54,688 pages with 2.7 million records, ordered in reverse chronological order with no way to skip to the last page. The World Intellectual Property Organization finds the same Spanish iron paths patents but unearths a differential arrangement for radio-controlled race cars from 1900. But inside we discover it's really from 1979. Seems this level of corruption is endemic in the patent field. Wonder who's benefiting from this misinformation. Meanwhile, still looking, I discovered the Oxford English Dictionary, which claims that the earliest known use of the word radio is in the 1900s. But the earliest evidence is from 1907, in a writing by L. de Forest. But you are granted the privilege of paying them to actually see that evidence. Really? On 18 July 1907, Lee de Forest made the first ship-to-shore transmissions by radio telephone, which adds some credence to the claim, but I have to tell you, I'm not particularly convinced. Taking a different approach, starting at Guglielmo Marconi, his first efforts in 1894 showed the wireless activation of a bell on the other side of the room. 6 months later, he managed to cross 3 kilometres, realising that this could become capable of longer distances. The Italian Ministry of Post and Telegraphs didn't respond to his application for funding, so in 1896, at the age of 21, moving to Great Britain, he arrived in Dover, where the customs officer opened his case to find various apparatus, which were destroyed because they could be a bomb. Lodging a patent, improvements in transmitting electrical impulses and signals and in apparatus therefore, was the first patent for a communication system on radio waves. It was granted a year later. One problem. It doesn't have the word radio in it. Instead, it talks about a Hertz radiator. So close. So we've narrowed it down to somewhere between 1896 and 1907. That's an 11-year window. Some observations. De Forest founded a company called the Radio, Telephone and Telegraph Company. It's unclear exactly when this happened. It collapsed in 1909 and was founded after disagreement with management of his previous company, apparently on 28 November 1906. A quick aside, apparently, in 1881, Alexander Graham Bell used the word radiophone for the first time, which he used to refer to a system that used light to transmit wirelessly. He also referred to it as a photophone. You could argue that because light and radio are the same thing, this is the first legitimate use of the word radio in the context of communication. But I'm not buying it. I'll leave you with the discovery that on 30 December 1904, the British Post Office published a Post Office circular with the instructions to use the word radio in the service instructions. Think of it as the metadata associated with the telegram. This information has been repeated often without evidence. If you're keen, the Postal Museum is located in Phoenix Place, London. I've contacted them to see if that particular circular is in their possession. Amazingly, the Post Office circulars have been digitised between 1666 and 1899. So close, but no cigar. That said, I looked for the elusive Volume 7 of the set to see if there were any straggling references to radio, but couldn't confirm this. The Postal Museum catalogue returns plenty of early references to radio, but it's hard to tell what's real and what's written after the fact. Anyone know of any research grants that will allow me to dig into this on site? Feel free to get in touch. Oh, a bed would be good too. I think this might take a while. At the moment, the best I have is an uncorroborated 30 December 1904 for the origin of the word radio in English. In other words, it was imported into Italian. No sign of Marconi, Bell or De Forest. I'm Ono, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.
Frank Karnauskas, N1UW, AMSAT Director and Vice President of Development, is pleased to announce that 2 grant applications were approved this week by Amateur Radio Digital Communication. The first grant is for additional software licenses for production of BuzzSat.com's series of online courses designed for high school students. The first course, Introduction to Satellite Meteorology, was introduced at Hambention 2025. The production cycle begins with content development by a volunteer subject matter expert. In the case of the Satellite Meteorology course, retired high school Earth science teacher Eric Sonnewald N2XSE created content by harvesting open source material, both text and illustrations, and organizing it into a frame-by-frame presentation. From there, the frames are located into a specialized educational authoring program that adds a complex assortment of interactivity tools that help make the learning experience engaging and effective. Constant interaction required of the student helps to prevent the lessons from becoming a mind-numbing text, next page, turning sedative. The authoring software has several AI-assisted capabilities, including the ability to generate audio narrative for text and to translate courseware into up to 70 different languages. The theme of the lesson is Satellites in Space Help Us Live a Better Life on Earth. 14 courses are planned for completion by the end of 2026. The courses are free to students, teachers, at-home educators, scouting leaders, and lifelong learners of all ages. You can experience the Introduction to Satellite Meteorology course now at www.buzzsat.com. The second grant is for production of a satellite-themed coloring book for younger, elementary-age kids. The coloring pages in the book show how satellites play important roles in almost every aspect of modern life. Satellites and their role in agriculture, navigation, broadcasting, pollution control, and wildfire fighting are just a few of the 12 topics shown in the book. Production of the coloring book began about a month before the application for the grant was made, so the finished book cover as well as the sketches for a few inside coloring pages were shown at the AMSAT Space Symposium held back in October. The coloring books will be available before the end of this year for download free of charge from the AMSAT-sponsored www.kidsat.com website.
You are listening to This Week in Amateur Radio, available as an on-demand stream from Spotify, Deezer, and wherever podcasts are available.
The Digital Library of Amateur Radio and Communications recently added publications provided by AMSAT from 1969 through 2013 to the Internet Archive. These include the vast majority of issues of the AMSAT newsletter, AMSAT Satellite Report, AMSAT's Orbit magazine, and the AMSAT Journal for that time period. The Digital Library of Amateur Radio and Communications is a library of materials and collections related to amateur radio and early communications. The DLARC is funded by a significant grant from Amateur Radio Digital Communications, a private foundation, to create a digital library that documents, preserves, and provides open access to the history of this community.
The 6th Annual Youth Dream Rig Essay Contest is about to get underway. Here with all the details, reporting from League headquarters, is John Ross, KD8IDJ.
The contest is sponsored by the Intrepid DX Group, a California-based 501c3 nonprofit organization promoting amateur radio in developing nations. But this year, a change. This year, rather than our past essays, we are seeking well-thought-out and clearly communicated project proposals for a public access amateur radio station, said Paul S. Ewing, N6PSE, president of the Intrepid DX Group. This year's contest is called America Radio for Greater Good. Written proposals may be submitted between November 10th and December 10th, 2025, by amateur radio operators age 25 or younger, describing how they would establish a club, contest, community, or emergency communication station in a school, church, fire station, community center, hospital, or other public building. And that station must be in the USA, and only U.S. licensed amateur radio operators may submit proposals. And proposals may be submitted via email to the Intrepid DX Group at gmail.com or via USPS. The awardee of the complete station will be announced on December 15th, 2025. For more information about the Intrepid DX Group, visit its website at intrepid.dx.com. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
This is a departure from our conventional essay contest, added Ewing. We're looking for proposals that would place the station in a secure and common area where it could be enjoyed by other licensed amateurs. Once the winning proposal is selected, the proposal author will have up to 60 days to secure written permission from the owner or guardian of the facility. The written permission must indicate approval for the station and the antenna to be installed. The proposal author may be the trustee of the station. The equipment provided will include a high-frequency transceiver, VHF and UHF transceiver, a 13.8 power supply, 2 100-foot lengths of coax, and antennas. For more information about the Intrepid DX Group, visit its website at intrepid-dx.com.
Save the date for the fun and entertaining annual ARRL YouTube telethon to raise money for the ARRL Teachers Institute on Wireless Technology, which will be held on Saturday, November 29th, 2025, on the Ham Radio Crash Course YouTube channel. In past years, tens of thousands of dollars have been raised to support this important program to invest in the next generation of amateur radio. Hosted this year by YouTuber Josh Nass, KI6NAZ, hear from several amateur radio content creators and technical contributors who will join Nass and others on the stream. ARRL Director of Education and Learning Steve Goodgame, K5ATA, will also join to discuss details of the Teachers Institute and its successes. The ARRL Teachers Institute is a donor-funded professional development program designed to help classroom teachers elevate their science, technology, engineering, and mathematics or STEM programs through the use of wireless technology. There were 13 sessions conducted in 2025.
Amateur radio on the International Space Station will commemorate the 25th anniversary of continuous human presence aboard that station with a special worldwide slow-scan TV event in mid-November. The ISS has been continuously inhabited since November 2 of the year 2000, marking a major milestone in human spaceflight and international cooperation. ARISS, the first educational payload on the station, continues to play a key role in inspiring students, supporting STEM engagement, and connecting the global amateur radio community with astronauts. The Series 90 SSTV event, titled ISS at 25 and Scouts, will feature 12 SSTV images, celebrating the station's 25-year milestone and scouting. Transmissions begin on Wednesday, November 12, around 17:30 UTC, and continue through Thursday, November 20. Downlink will occur on 145.800 MHz FM using the PD-120 mode. following the standard ARIS pattern of approximately 2 minutes of transmission, followed by 2 minutes off. A planned pause in images will occur to support an ARIS school contact with Azerbaijan on November 16th at 1450 UTC. Radio amateurs and listeners worldwide are encouraged to participate as ISS SSTV events are accessible to stations with a broad range of equipment. Many operators successfully receive images using only a handheld VHF radio and a phone-based decoding app, while more advanced satellite stations can produce particularly clean results. SSTV events continue to be a popular entry point for newcomers interested in amateur space communication. Participants may upload their best-received images to ARISS SSTV portal and then request a commemorative event certificate. Submitted images must be single, unedited slow-scan TV frames in GIF, JPEG, or PNG format, limited to 800 by 800 pixels and 800 kilobytes. Once the image is uploaded, operators will be prompted to request their personalized certificate, and because submissions are only accepted for a short time after the conclusion of the event, prompt participation is encouraged. In keeping with past ARIS activities, operators may also request a traditional ARIS QSL card to confirm SSTV reception. QSL requests must be mailed to the appropriate regional bureau with a self-addressed stamped envelope or sufficient return postage. AMSAT congratulates ARIS and the ISS program on 25 years of continuous human presence aboard the station and encourages radio amateurs everywhere to join in this special commemorative event in celebration honoring the ISS legacy and the role of amateur radio in space education.
NASA's James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST, has received a remarkable upgrade, not from astronauts or hardware, but from artificial intelligence. Researchers at the University of Sydney developed a software-based solution that corrected subtle image blurring in one of JWST's most sensitive instruments, restoring the telescope's precision without the need for any on-orbit servicing mission. The issue affected JWST's aperture masking interferometer, a specialized instrument designed to resolve extremely fine features when observing stars and exoplanets. Soon after operations began, scientists noticed faint distortions caused by tiny electronic effects within the infrared detector. Rather than planning a complex repair mission, similar to how astronauts serviced the Hubble Space Telescope decades ago, the team pursued a software-only approach. Two PhD researchers, Louis de Goy and Max Charles, created a new calibration system called Amigo that uses artificial intelligence to model the behavior of JWST's detector in space. By correcting a phenomenon known as the brighter, fatter effect, where electrical charge slightly spreads between pixels, their software restored AMI's ability to produce extremely sharp, high-contrast images from millions of miles away. With the correction applied, JWST has achieved sharper-than-ever detections of faint and closely orbiting objects. The team demonstrated improved imaging of a dim exoplanet and a brown dwarf companion orbiting the near star HD 206893, about 133 light-years from Earth. Additional examples included high-resolution observations of Io's volcanic surface, a Wolf-Rayet star system, and a distant black hole jet, confirming that the fix significantly boosts scientific capability. The effort highlights a growing era where software and artificial intelligence can enhance or even repair spacecraft from the ground. Instead of sending astronauts to bolt on new parts, they managed to fix things with code, said Professor Peter Tuthill of the University of Sydney, whose group originally contributed the AMI instrument design for the spacecraft. The achievement underscores both the telescope's flexibility and Australia's strong role in cutting-edge astronomical instrumentation. The research has now been publicly released and peer review is underway. The software tools are being prepared for use by the broader JWST science community, ensuring the telescope continues delivering unmatched views of the universe, all thanks to a clever fix developed on Earth with no spacewalks or hardware intervention required.
We pause for stations along the network to identify. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, available as a direct download on our website at www.twiar.net.
Bruce Page, KK5DO, is here now with this week's AMSAT report. Bruce?
Thanks, John. CatSat, a 6U CubeSat, was built by the students, faculty, and staff at the University of Arizona. It was launched aboard a Firefly Aerospace Alpha rocket. The satellite is in a sun-synchronous polar orbit. After testing, the linear transponder was open for amateur use on November 9th. This is not for the faint at heart. The satellite is listening on 5.663 gigahertz and transmitting on 10.47 gigahertz. The satellite can point the antennas at the Earth for about 10 minutes per pass. This will not be easy for the inexperienced. However, if you're a microwave guy or gal, this is for you. Just a little hint. A 1-meter C-band dish was used for uplinking and a 6.1-meter X-band dish for the downlink. That equates to a 3-foot and 20-foot dish. This is Bruce Page, KK5DO. Back to you, John.
And thanks, Bruce, for that report.
It is time for this week's look at solar weather and the terrestrial propagation forecast. There were 2 nights of visible aurora throughout the continental United States, and dead HF bands due to a severe geomagnetic storm caused by what Space.com calls a colossal X 5.1 class solar flare, and associated coronal mass ejection on Tuesday, November 11th. Spaceweather.com for November 14th reports that a NASA model of the latest coronal mass ejection suggests that it could deliver a glancing blow to our planet's magnetic field late on November 16th. Meanwhile, Region 4274 was responsible for multiple low to mid-level C-class flares. The largest was a C4.5 on November 12th. Slight decay was observed in Region 4274. Motion along the inversion lines was minimal within the group. The rest of the spot groups were either stable or in decay. No Earth-directed coronal mass ejections were observed. Solar activity is now forecast to be high, with minor to moderate flares expected, and strong flare activity likely on November 13th through the 15th. Mostly due to the flare potential of Region 4274. Solar wind parameters continued to reflect persistent negative polarity coronal hole high-speed stream influences. Total field strength observed on several readings was near 8. Solar wind speeds were between 450 km per second and 600 km per second. Phi was variable through the first half of the period, before turning mostly negative for the second half. The solar wind environment was likely to become mildly enhanced with coronal mass ejection influences on November 10th, as the November 7th coronal mass ejection passed in close proximity to Earth. Stronger solar wind disturbances were likely over November 11th and 12th, due to the anticipated arrival of the November 9th asymmetric halo coronal mass ejection. For more information concerning radio propagation, visit the ARRL Technical Information Service, read a quick guide to HF propagation using solar indices, and check out the propagation page of Karl Lewetzelschwab, K9LA. For customizable propagation charts, visit the vocap online for ham radio website.
Just ahead in radio sport this week, November 15th through the 16th, it's the Ham Spirit Contest, CW phone there. November 15th, the All-Austrian 160-meter contest, CW. November 15th as well, the REF 160-meter contest, that's CW. November 15th and 16th, the South American Integration Contest, that's CW. And November 15th as well, the Feldheld Sprint, that's digital. November 15th, the RSGP 1.8 megahertz contest, CW. And on November 15th to the 17th, it's the ARRL November Sweepstakes single sideband, that is phone. And remember to visit the ARRL contest calendar for more events and information. Upcoming section, state, and division conventions, November 15th, the Superstition ARC Superfest and Electronics Expo, hosting the ARRL Arizona State Convention. That's in Mesa, Arizona. December 12th through the 13th, the Tampa Bay Ham Fest, hosting the ARRL West Central Florida Section Convention in Plant City, Florida. January 10th, Ham Radio University, ARRL New York City Long Island Section Convention. That's in Brookville, New York. And on January 16th to the 17th, the Southwest Florida Regional Ham Fest, the ARRL Southern Florida Section Convention in Fort Myers, Florida. And remember to search the ARRL Ham Fest and Convention database to find more events in your area.
2 amateurs have been recognized by the YASME Foundation for their ongoing contributions to young amateur radio operators in helping them develop technical and operating skill. Ed Engelman, KG8CX, is being honored for his work with the YACH program, which serves young amateurs. YACH is an acronym for the Young Amateurs Communications Ham Team, which connects young radio operators around the world to form friendships and share their experience. Don Jones, K6ZO, has been recognized for his ongoing work training and supporting young operators in rural Malawi. One of the teenage operators from Don's training sessions has recently been added to the team of de-expeditioners who are going to Andaman and the Nicobar Islands, the Bay of Bengal, next year. Both hams will receive the YASME Excellence Award, which was established in 2008 by the Foundation. That announcement was made October 30th. In the same announcement, the Foundation's Board of Directors said the YASME has also made a grant to support the RM Noise Project, which employs artificial intelligence to remove noise from sideband and CW reception.
In 2022, AMSAT rolled out its community-based youth initiative program, which provides age-appropriate lessons about satellites for youngsters in 2 age groups, grades 5 through 7 and grades 8 through 12. In the first year, a grant from the Quarter Century Wireless Association helped get things going. 3 years later, as the initiative gathers even more momentum, Amateur Radio Digital Communication has announced that it is providing the initiative with 2 grants designed to enhance both of the student group's learning experiences. One grant will allow production of a coloring book for the younger students, who are of elementary school age. The pages will depict satellites being used to aid in pollution control, wildfire fighting, broadcasting, and navigation. The other grant will help secure more software licenses for online courses for the older students, who are of high school age. The first course is called Introduction to Satellite Meteorology, and visitors to Hamvention this past spring got a preview of its contents. Central to the initiative are its 2 websites, KidsSat and BuzzSat, which contain age-appropriate activities for the younger and older students, respectively. The students also have access to a network of online software-defined radios that they can use as ground stations for receiving images and telemetry from satellites making passes overhead.
The Federal Communications Commission is taking steps to ban a China-based telecom company from providing international and domestic telecom services to and within the United States. The FCC's order to show cause begins the process of revoking the authority of HKT International Limited and its subsidiaries. The FCC says that HKT is affiliated with a CCP-controlled entity, namely China Unicom, which the FCC says is on its covered list due to national security concerns. The Commission says that its action against HKT is consistent with previous bipartisan efforts to deny or revoke authorizations to Chinese state-owned enterprises seeking to provide telecommunications services in the United States.
In the UK, Ofcom has agreed to the Radio Society of Great Britain's request to extend the 146 to 147 MHz NOV for a further year. It is available on a non-interference basis, and the NOV is subject to a 30-day notice period of change or withdrawal. Ofcom's objective in allocating this new part of the spectrum is to encourage amateurs to experiment and test new communication schemes and systems. The RSGB VHF manager would therefore welcome reports of innovative use of the spectrum to support future discussions via the email vhf.manager@rsgb.org.uk. Full license holders can apply for the 146 through 147 MHz NOV on the RSGB website.
You're listening to North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine of the air. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, distributed worldwide at twiar.net.
It is time for this week's edition of AMSAT Satellites Shorts from All Over. We begin with an announcement that Elon Musk's Starlink has made satellite internet service free to residents in Jamaica and the Bahamas following widespread communications outages caused by Hurricane Melissa. Starlink says the temporary measure is intended to support emergency response and recovery efforts as infrastructure repairs continue. Although service fees are waived through the end of November, new users would still need to purchase a Starlink terminal if they don't already have one. The company also enabled direct-to-cell service in Jamaica via Liberty Caribbean, allowing compatible phones to connect directly to Starlink satellites during terrestrial network disruptions. Starlink's low Earth orbit constellation provides lower latency than traditional geostationary satellite internet, making it useful in disaster environments where real-time communication is critical, especially for first responders and emergency coordinators. SpaceX has offered similar emergency access before, including after major flooding in Texas and during Hurricanes Helene and Milton in 2024, reflecting an ongoing pattern of deploying satellite support during major disasters. Next, an historic 26-meter radio dish in Rosman, North Carolina, now part of the Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute, or PERI, once served NASA's Space Tracking and Data Acquisition Network and later supported U.S. intelligence operations during the Cold War. Established in 1962, the site tracked early NASA satellites, supported Apollo recovery communications, and later hosted NSA signals intelligence missions before being decommissioned in the 1990s. PERI's nonprofit owners have since preserved the facility as an education and research campus, hosting camps, astronomy programs, and university instruments while maintaining operational deep space-capable antennas. The Institute recently listed portions of its 192-acre campus for sale or lease, seeking a partner who will continue its STEM outreach mission rather than convert the property to private development. PERI maintains a real tracking capability, recently receiving signals from Intuitive Machines' IM-1 lunar lander and preparing to listen for NASA's Artemis II Orion spacecraft, regardless of official involvement. Leaders stress that PERI is not shutting down, and they aim to secure support from the growing commercial space sector to keep the iconic 26 West dish operating as a public educational and scientific asset. And finally, AMSAT proudly recognizes two new operators who have earned the prestigious Gridmaster Award. David Fisher, KG0D, achieved Gridmaster Award number 77 on October 19, 2025, followed by Gene Eigeme, KJ4M, who earned award number 78 on October 22, 2025. The Gridmaster Award honors amateur satellite operators who successfully confirm contacts from all 488 Maidenhead grid squares across the continental United States, a challenge requiring exceptional operating skill, patience, and commitment. These accomplishments reflect not only the determination of the recipients, but also the strong support and activity of the portable operators who make rare grid contacts possible. With only a small number of amateurs having reached this milestone, each new award represents a significant achievement within the satellite community. Congratulations to David and Gene on reaching this elite level of satellite operating excellence.
A giant radio telescope in Crimea used in the past to support missions to Mars and Venus and attempt to contact alien civilizations has been destroyed in a drone attack. Ukrainian Defense Forces took down the 230-foot or 70-meter antenna dish to prevent Russian forces from using it to guide attacks on its territory. The RT-70 radio telescope has been under Russian control since the annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. According to Defense Express, Russians carried out major upgrades to the 5,000 metric ton structure to use it for military communications. The telescope reportedly served as an antenna for the GLONASS satellite navigation system, Russia's alternative to the American GPS. Reportedly, the use of the RT-70 radio antenna increased the accuracy of GLONASS by around 30%. In late August, footage emerged captured by a drone slamming into the 50-year-old radio telescope. The drone, according to the Defense Express, aimed at the 200-kilowatt radio receiver at the heart of the telescope. The custom-made receiver produced in 2011 in Moscow during the last major upgrade of the telescope will be hard to replace, Defense Express said, meaning Russia will not likely be able to repair the antenna anytime soon. The destroyed dish was one of 3 RT-70 radio telescopes built across the former USSR in the mid-1970s to form the Soviet Deep Space Network. Soviet satellite controllers used the radio telescope near the city of Yevpatoria on the Black Sea coast to communicate with several missions of the Venus exploration program Venera in the late 1970s and early 1980s. In the 2000s, the telescope featured prominently in several initiatives intended to contact alien life. Over 20 message packages were sent from the telescope in 4 messaging campaigns targeting potentially habitable planets orbiting stars outside the solar system. Most of these messages have not yet reached their destinations. The earliest to arrive at its target is heading to an Earth-like planet orbiting the star Gliese 581, some 20.5 light-years from Earth, which it is expected to reach in 2029. The Yevpatoria RT-70 radio antenna also carried out astronomical research, detecting signals from planets, asteroids, and distant galactic centers. In the 2000s, the telescope supported the European Space Agency's missions Mars Express and Rosetta, destined for Mars and Comet 67P respectively. According to Orbital Today, the Shane Mirror Telescope, the largest optical sky-watching machine in Ukraine, featured a 7.8-foot mirror, is now under the control of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and so are the optical telescopes, radio telescope, and laser rangefinders at the Semez Observatory, located at Crimea's southernmost tip. Elsewhere in Ukraine, the giant Ukrainian radio telescope in Kharkiv sustained significant damage in 2022 when the region was under Russian occupation. Orbital Today reported that Russian troops stole instruments and computers from the observatory and laid landmines across the 1.6 million square foot site covered with more than 2,000 dipole radio antennas.
The CatSat team has announced that preparations are underway to open public operation of the spacecraft's linear transponder, offering amateur radio a new microwave band satellite resource. CatSat has been in orbit since July of 2024 and is now entering the phase of its mission focused on community engagement and technology demonstration. CatSat was launched aboard a Firefly Aerospace Alpha rocket from Vandenberg Space Force Base as part of NASA's CubeSat launch initiative. Measuring roughly the size of a cereal box, the spacecraft carries a suite of payloads, including an inflatable antenna, in addition to ionospheric monitoring via high-frequency radio measurements and imaging of the Earth. CatSat includes a linear transponder for amateur radio. The satellite orbits the Earth in a nearly sun-synchronous polar orbit, circling the globe approximately every 90 minutes. The mission is funded by the University of Arizona and the Arizona Space Institute, with additional support from industry partners. CatSat listens at 5.663 GHz uplink and transmits a downlink at 10.47 GHz, providing approximately 200 kHz of bandwidth. Patch antennas on the spacecraft's Y face offer roughly 60-degree beam coverage and can point the antenna footprint at the ground stations for up to 10 minutes a pass. Power considerations limit each activation to about 15 minutes. Early on-orbit demonstrations use a 1-meter C-band uplink dish and a 6.1-meter X-band downlink. The CatSat team is now constructing more accessible ground stations using 1-meter class commercial antennas to show that amateur access is practical with reasonably sized equipment. Operators will be able to monitor the schedule updates, informally known as the 5 and Dive Plan, through the CatSat mission website. Operators can follow the activation plan and future opportunities at catsat.arizona.edu.
The FCC's Space Bureau has been asked to approve a proposed launch next April for a satellite in non-geostationary orbit that will deploy mirrors to provide sunlight on demand, according to the company's website. Reflect Orbital, a startup company based in California, has filed its application this past summer for a license for what it hopes will be the first of 4,000 mirrored satellites that it wants to place in low Earth orbit by 2030. The April launch is being eyed for a demonstration satellite which will carry a mirror that measures 18 by 18 meters, or 60 by 60 feet. Sunlight's reflection by that envisioned constellation would extend daylight beyond twilight by as much as 4 hours, increasing solar power production to locations where Reflect Global has customers. The company says that its technology supports clean energy generation, but astronomers, biologists, and other scientists have raised questions about the prospect of light pollution on human and animal health and the ability to study the skies effectively. Astronomers, in particular, have said that lighting up the dark skies would impede their work, which uses sensitive cameras. According to published reports, Reflect Orbital recently began working with astronomers to minimize the mirror's impact on them. Meanwhile, scientists have observed how nocturnal species' lives can be disrupted and perhaps imperiled by artificial light during the night. This past May, the U.S. Air Force awarded the project a $1.25 million Small Business Innovation Research contract to support its progress.
We pause for stations along the network to identify. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, available as a stream to your favorite digital device on Spotify, TuneIn.com, Overcast, iHeartMedia, and wherever you download your podcasts.
SpaceX launched its Bandwagon 4 Rideshare mission on November 2nd at 0509 UTC from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, deploying 18 satellites into a mid-inclination low Earth orbit. The flight is part of SpaceX's dedicated mid-inclination rideshare program, complementing the Transponder series that serves sun-synchronous orbit customers. All spacecraft were successfully released from the Falcon 9 upper stage approximately 75 minutes after liftoff. The manifest included SeveroSat-1, an amateur radio satellite built by Severo University in the Czech Republic in partnership with Mendel University in Brno and the Brno University of Technology. The 48-kilogram microsatellite carries a 9K6 G3RUH GFSK digipeater and AX25 telemetry on 436.025 MHz, coordinated through the International Amateur Radio Union. First signals were received shortly after deployment, with amateur operators reporting telemetry and digipeated packets and uploading frames to the SatNOGS network. The satellite supports student research, hands-on engineering education, and amateur radio experimentation, including an Earth imaging payload and an optical reflector system for laser technology trials. The largest spacecraft of the mission was a synthetic aperture radar imaging satellite for South Korea's Project 425 Defense Reconnaissance Program. This continues South Korea's partnership with SpaceX to deploy a constellation of independent surveillance satellites, following earlier launches on previous Bandwagon missions. The spacecraft is expected to provide high-resolution radar imagery to support national security and intelligence activities. Commercial Earth observation company ICEYE launched 3 additional synthetic aperture radar satellites for the Emirati firm Space 42, expanding the Foresight constellation for regional surveillance and environmental monitoring. Weather intelligence provider Tomorrow.io also flew 2 spacecraft to enhance its global atmospheric sensing network, supporting improved forecasting and climate modeling applications. Commercial space station developer VAST deployed its Haven Demo spacecraft, a 500-kilogram technology demonstrator designed to validate systems for the upcoming Haven 1 private station. The satellite will test avionics, communications, propulsion, and power systems in orbit. In addition, StarCloud launched StarCloud-1, a technology demonstration spacecraft billed as the first on-orbit artificial intelligence compute node featuring an advanced NVIDIA processor intended to run large language models in space. One newcomer was StarCloud, which flew its StarCloud-1 satellite on Bandwagon 4. The company aims to develop data centers in orbit. StarCloud announced October 30th that it will work with another startup, Rendezvous Robotics, to study how to use self-assembling spacecraft technology developed by Rendezvous on future StarCloud missions. StarCloud envisions future spacecraft requiring solar panels and radiators several kilometers long. The Bandwagon 4 mission demonstrates the increasing diversity of spacecraft utilizing commercial rideshare launches, spanning defense, scientific, commercial, and amateur radio missions. With SeaVrosat-1 now active on orbit, radio amateurs are encouraged to monitor 436.025 MHz and submit reception reports as commissioning continues.
The weekend of November 1st and 2nd ushered in an inaugural amateur radio conference in Australia organized by the Brisbane VHF Group. Known as QTech 2025, the conference in Brisbane, suburb of Chermside, focused on the next generation of radio operators who will become stewards of the airwaves. Their varied voices were heard throughout the 2-day program, both as presenters and guests. 2 university students, Otto, Victor Kilo 4, Oscar Tango Zulu, and Finn, Victor Kilo 4, India India, sparked dialogue with a talk on their theme, Young Hams. Yes, we do exist. Young amateurs' voices were also well heard during a town hall-style meeting to discuss ways to attract new hams and ensure amateur radio's future. According to a report by Kevin, Victor Kilo 4, Uniform Hotel, the Brisbane VHF Group's president, more than 70 registered delegates attended, and although a handful did participate remotely, most of them were present in person. Kevin's report, which appeared first in a Wireless Institute of Australia newscast, said one of the high points of the conference was perhaps one of its briefest, an 11-minute contact between 15 students and astronaut Johnny Kim, Kilo Juliet 5, Hotel Foxtrot Papa, at the moment the International Space Station orbit passed over Queensland. Like amateur radio itself, the conference is expected to have a bright future. Kevin said organizers are already working on QTech 2027.
In Sri Lanka, amateurs have just completed a successful national readiness exercise which simulated a tsunami, recalling the one that struck the region in December of 2004. It was a magnitude 9.2 undersea earthquake happening off northern Sumatra on December 5th, but fortunately it was simulated. The Disaster Management Center and the Radio Society of Sri Lanka responded as if it were happening for real, sending traffic designed to coordinate evacuations and respond to health emergencies and other critical situations. A statement from the Radio Society's Management Council posted on their Facebook page said that the HAMS field operations on VHF from Colombo, Galle, and Kalaterra provided uninterrupted data relay across the island. The scenario called for disaster response from a variety of agencies where such coordination was crucial. The field operators had strong support from home-based listening stations. Frequencies were also monitored by the Amateur Radio Society of India and member societies of International Amateur Radio Union Region 3. The Council statement said this exercise not only demonstrated the vital role and effectiveness of amateur radio in emergency response, but also reaffirmed the importance of strong collaboration between the RSSL and the Disaster Management Center in building national communication resilience and public awareness. Sri Lanka was among the many nations struck by the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami in late 2004 that killed tens of thousands.
What happens when a material loses its ability to conduct electricity, seemingly for no reason? Researchers have been working to solve that mystery, and they think they now know why. It's uncommon, but when it happens, as it does in the quantum realm, scientists have previously been left shrugging their shoulders. Now, when material that had been capable of conducting electricity loses that property, becoming an insulator, they're nodding their heads in recognition instead. As explained in a recent paper published in Physical Review Letters, an international team of researchers working at the DESI Institute in Germany made their discovery while working with a compound of the rare earth metals tellurium, selenium, and thulium. They found that the compound lost its inherent conductivity because of what researchers described as a particle dance involving a group of particles called polarons, quasi-particles, which can combine and behave as one particle instead of several. The polarons can spur activity between electrons and the nearby atoms, impeding the flow of electricity by slowing it down and eventually halting it altogether. The researchers wrote that their findings show that the properties of a material cannot be explained by its chemical composition alone. The scientists concluded that their findings about polarons may ultimately lead to development of new types of matter or the ability to alter some materials' optical, magnetic, or electrical properties.
You are listening to This Week in Amateur Radio, available to download as a podcast from anywhere on the web podcasts are available.
A student-built CubeSat from the University of Arizona is providing the latest microwave-band linear transponder for use by amateur radio operators. After entering orbit more than a year ago, the spacecraft known as CatSat began the earliest parts of its mission taking images of the Earth, monitoring the ionosphere via HF radio measurements, and demonstrating inflatable antenna technology. CatSat completes a full circle of the Earth every 90 minutes in a polar orbit that is nearly sun-synchronous. The linear transponder was commissioned successfully during the past few weeks. It listens on an uplink of 5.663 GHz and transmits on a downlink of 10.47 GHz, with an estimated bandwidth of 200 kHz. For more details or to follow its operation, visit the CatSat mission website at CatSat. That's catsat.arizona.edu.
And finally this week, when the musician-composer duo of Brian Eno and Beatty Wolf launched their new album, Liminal, on October 10th, they really launched it, in every sense of the word. On Facebook, Brian Eno described the pair's musical partnership as exploring an intimate and unfamiliar new sonic world. So what better venue for it than some faraway sonic world? The pair beamed the album into space via microwave transmission 5 days after its release. At the helm of Liminal's liftoff was Nobel Prize-winning physicist Robert Wilson, operating the Holmdel Horn antenna in New Jersey, which had played a role in helping prove the Big Bang Theory. The microwave horn antenna, as it turns out, is a well-tuned instrument of music as well as science. For Beatty Wolf, this was actually its encore performance. Robert Wilson helped broadcast a previous album of hers in 2017, a work known as Raw Space. Music, the universal language, is now the universe's language. Even NASA has got into the act. In 2008, the space agency marked its 50th anniversary by sending a recording of the Beatles' Across the Universe into deep space. Last year, its Deep Space Station 13 radio dish antenna in California beamed the first hip-hop song into space, Missy Elliott's The Rain, Supa Dupa Fly. This past May, the European Space Agency broadcast a Vienna Symphony Orchestra performance of Johannes Strauss's Blue Danube Waltz from its radio antenna in Spain at the speed of light in the direction of the Voyager 1 probe. This is the never-ending journey of music, It is now surrounded by constellations and CubeSats, dancing with the stars.
Many of the news and information items heard in this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio have been provided by the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL Audio News Service, and the ARRL Letter, AMSAT, the Radio Amateurs of Canada, the Shortwave Listening Post, the Federal Communications Commission, the Radio Society of Great Britain, and Ofcom, the South African Radio League, the International Amateur Radio Union, the Wireless Institute of Australia and the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the New Zealand Association of Radio Transmitters, the Amateur Radio Newsline, the Rain Hamcast, Eric Guth, 4Z1UG and QSO Today, QRZ.com, the International Telecommunications Union, the 425DX News, Parks on the Air, and the Soda Reflector, and various news sources on the Internet.
This Week in Amateur Radio is heard all around the world on the amateur bands, and on great repeater systems like the KB3 CNN Gateway FM Association repeater, on 146.730 MHz every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m., covering the wide area of western Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. If your repeater system carries This Week in Amateur Radio, let us know via email, and we will mention your station in an upcoming edition. Send your information to w2xbs77@gmail.com.
With special thanks to all our weekly news sources and to you, our listeners, that wraps up this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio. If you'd like to write to us, you can find everything you need, including archive editions of the news service, at our website at twiar.net. And now, for all of us at This Week in Amateur Radio headquarters and our news team around the world, this is Chris Perrine, KB2FAF, wishing you a 73.